Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. Senator Hume.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. I don't think it will come as any surprise at all to find that the government does not support a Royal Commission or a Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry into the banking and financial services sector, because such a commission will not benefit consumers nor will it benefit the Australian economy. A Royal Commission will cost taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. It will take so many years to complete. It would undermine the confidence that we have in our banking sector, which is so important. It will harm investment in the banking sector. It will harm investment in the economy, and it could put at risk our AAA credit rating, which is so important for our prosperity and progress. And not only that, most importantly, it will do nothing to assist consumers in any practical way at all. While others in this chamber pursue headlines and populist politicking, and I certainly don't limit that criticism to the Greens, Senator Whish-Wilson, this government is actually delivering. It is actually delivering on some of the most ambitious financial systems reforms and a reform agenda in modern history. The Coalition's reform agenda is wide-ranging and it is comprehensive. It will strengthen the financial regulator, ASIC, and it will ensure that consumers get a much fairer deal. The government's commitment to a strong and stable financial sector started long ago with the commissioning of the Financial Systems Inquiry, the Murray Inquiry. Now, you may remember as far back as 2010, the Coalition made an election commitment to conduct a broad root and branch inquiry into Australia's financial system, and on coming to government, it delivered on that promise. It appointed David Murray to head that commission. David Murray is a man of great knowledge and has the admiration and respect of many people in this chamber, but also so many people in the industry. The Murray Inquiry was arguably the most thorough report into the banking sector in a generation. It was an inquiry which, unbelievably, disingenuously, was not supported by Labor. And in fact, when he was the Treasurer, Chris Bowen said, and I'm quoting here, that the financial system is strong, well-regulated and well-managed, and I have not seen a case for a full-blown inquiry. This is Chris Bowen when he was Treasurer. I have not seen a case for a full-blown inquiry. The Labor Party opposed the Murray Inquiry despite the fact that most of the notable scandals and collapses, such as Trio Capital, Great Southern and, of course, Storm Financial, which you mentioned, Senator Whish-Wilson, happened on Labor's watch, and yet it opposed the Murray Inquiry, when the Leader of the Opposition, Mr Bill Shorten, was the leader responsible for financial services. The irony just abounds. What a surprise. In 6 years of government, Labor did not call for a Banking Royal Commission. Labor was in government for 6 years and never once looked to review our financial system. Now, let me just remind the chamber of Labor's positions on the banking sector at that time. So the member for Maribyrnong, Bill Shorten, our Leader of the Opposition, was Minister for Financial Services and Superannuation for over 1,000 days. For over 1,000 days. And at that time, he had the power to propose inquiries, to draft laws, and yet he did nothing. Nothing. When Bill Shorten was the minister, he said, "Australia has some of the best banks in the world. Australia has some of the best banks in the world, and it is partly because of our excellent regulatory system and prudent management." Your leader said that, Senator Dastyari, when he was Minister for Financial Services.
Senator Hume.
Through the chair.
Senator Hume, yes, if you mind, you make your remarks through the chair. And Senator Dastyari, I certainly don't want to curb your enthusiasm, but your interjections are becoming much louder and more frequent, and the senator does have the right to be heard in silence. Senator Hume.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. I will also remind the chamber of the member for McMahon, Chris Bowen, when he was Assistant Treasurer, again for more than 1,000 days. More than 1,000 days, when he had the power to propose inquiries and to draft laws, he also did nothing. He did nothing. When Chris Bowen was the minister, he said our two market guardians are the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority and the Australian Securities and Investments Commission. The standards they set is world's best practice. Now, that was the Treasurer at the time, the Labor Treasurer at the time. The standards they set are world's best practice. And that was reported in the Sydney Morning Herald in 2008. And yet now there is a call for a Banking Royal Commission. The irony abounds. And in 2015, Senator Whish-Wilson will recall, he put forward a motion for a Royal Commission into the financial services industry, and Labor voted against it. Labor voted against it in 2015. Now, let me remind you about the Murray inquiry. For those of you that haven't read it, I in fact have. I was employed to read it before I came into Parliament. The Murray inquiry was— I was. Thank you very much. I was employed to read the Murray inquiry and to comment on it. The Murray inquiry was incredibly comprehensive. It was incredibly comprehensive. The government has accepted the overwhelming majority of that inquiry's recommendations, and it also included 6 additional measures that were consistent with the inquiry's underlying philosophy. The government's response included commitments to unprecedented improvements to consumer protections, to banking stability, to governance and to ASIC powers. And just so far, since the Murray inquiry report was tabled, just so far the Turnbull government has enacted critical consumer protection reforms that lift professional, educational and the ethical standards of financial advisors. It has limited the incentives paid to financial advisors for the sale of life insurance products, to limit the risk that products will be sold to consumers that are not in their best interest. The Turnbull Coalition government has also introduced reforms that will ensure that retail client monies are protected where financial firms become insolvent, and the Turnbull government has strengthened the resources and the powers of ASIC. After completing the capability review of ASIC in April last year, just in April last year, you will remember that the government announced a $217 million funding package for ASIC to bolster its enforcement capabilities and to accelerate reform measures recommended specifically by the Murray inquiry. Mr Medcraft was questioned on that funding during the last estimates, and has said that it proved an adequate amount to do what ASIC needed to do, to actually implement those reform measures. The Turnbull government has, for the first time, called on the major banks to appear at least annually before the House of Representatives Standing Committee on Economics to explain its pricing decisions and to discuss their progress in responding to various issues raised in previous parliamentary inquiries. This is a process that has been highly publicised, has been highly successful. Nobody wants to attend an inquiry. Nobody wants to attend an inquiry where they feel they are under a part of a witch hunt. And yet the banks and the financial services organisations have approached these inquiries with an open mind. They've been extraordinarily candid and extremely helpful. I don't think we could be expecting any more of them than they are giving us now. The first of those hearings was held on the 4th to the 6th of October in last year, and the 3rd of the 8th of March this year, respectively. And the committee has already tabled its first final report in November 2016. The Turnbull government has also commissioned a number of critical reviews, including a review of the financial system's external dispute resolution, the EDR framework, the Ramsay review. That's headed by Ian Ramsay, a man of great respect and admiration from both sides of the chamber. The government has committed to establishing a one-stop shop dispute resolution scheme that will provide consumers with the independent and timely access to justice and access to compensation where appropriate. The Ramsay Review released its interim report in December 2016, and it will reproduce its two final reports to government in March and June this year. The government has also commissioned a review into the small business lending practices of the major banks, the Carnell Review. The government has released the Carnell report and the government response. It released those on the 3rd of February this year. And the Carnell report makes 15 separate recommendations, 4 of which are for government, but the remaining 11 are directed to the banking industry itself. Those recommendations are targeting where reforms need to be made. In total, the inquiry considered 23 of the most egregious cases that were presented to the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Corporations and Financial Services, the inquiry into the impairment of customer loans. And of those cases considered, 1/3 were a result of poor business decisions. Another third were a result of both poor business decisions and poor bank practices. And the final third were representative of poor bank practices and possible unconscionable conduct on part of the banks involved. The Carnell report has addressed those specific cases. In respect of the recommendations for the banking industry, the government expects the industry to give the highest priority to very careful consideration of the 11 recommendations that focus on changes to the way banks deal with their small business customers, and to provide a considered response to the report and a proposed plan of action to address the issues of the concerns raised in the report. In respect of the recommendations for government, the Carnell report provides further support for the establishment of a one-stop shop EDR scheme that I've mentioned earlier that has already been agreed by government. The government has extended and strengthened the Ramsay Review terms of reference to allow that expert panel to make the recommendations rather than observations on the merits and potential design of a last resort compensation scheme, and to consider the merits of and the issues involved in providing access to redress for past disputes as well. And finally, the report on the extended issues will be delivered by the end of June this year. The Turnbull Coalition Government has also commissioned a review of the specific allegations made against ComInsure. Very high-profile case was on the 7:30 report and has been in an awful lot of financial media, as well as mainstream media, and also on the broader insurance sector. ASIC released its report on the sector on the 12th of October 2016, and it will produce its findings on the ComInsure matter in the first quarter of 2017 as part of the ASIC reviews. In response to the Financial Systems Inquiry, the Murray Inquiry, the Turnbull government has announced the terms of reference for an ASIC enforcement task force, which is currently reviewing ASIC's enforcement and penalties powers, again something that I know Senator Whish-Wilson mentioned, and will report to government in the second half of this year. And finally, it's worth mentioning also that the Minister for Finance, Senator Cormann, on behalf of the Turnbull government, recently announced the Open Government Partnership National Action Plan. This is an enormous, a very ambitious plan which includes action across a broad spectrum of very important areas for government, but importantly, it commits to review and consult on new whistleblower protection regime in the tax fraud area, whistleblowing regime, which is again something Senator Whish-Wilson has referred to in his broad terms of reference. This is something that the government is already dealing with. That new whistleblower protection regime will provide significant enhancements to the current corporate whistleblower protection regime. There are currently, as mentioned, 17 parliamentary Senate joint and House inquiries, or past inquiries, into the banking sector and financial services, and my committee alone, the Senate Economics Committee, is considering a number of them as we speak. One of the things that Senator Whish-Wilson wants to cover is white-collar crime. Well, we are already covering white-collar crime. We are looking at criminal, civil and administrative penalties for white-collar crime. That reporting date is the 23rd of March. If you can just wait a day, Senator Whish-Wilson, we'll have an answer for you. We'll have a report for you. We're looking at Australia's general insurance industry. That report is due on the 22nd of June. Again, this parliament is already looking at these issues. We have already looked at scrutiny of financial advice. The reporting date for that is on the 30th of June this year. And finally, as Senator Gallagher will well know, we are looking at the consumer protection in the banking, insurance and financial sector. Again, another inquiry with a very broad terms of reference. This parliament is already dealing with these issues. It is unnecessary to take it to an inquiry, a further inquiry with Royal Commission powers. Or a commission of inquiry. The financial services inquiry, the Murray inquiry, the inquiry that Labor said was unnecessary, was unprecedented. Unprecedented in its breadth, it was very thorough, it was highly comprehensive, and it was very well received. It was well received by industry, it was well received by consumers. The Turnbull government's response to the FSI has been also equally wide-ranging. It has been comprehensive, it has been extremely well considered, and it has been timely. There are an awful lot of recommendations in that report, and the vast majority of them have been taken on board, they have been considered, and they have been dealt with. They have been dealt with in a timely manner, and they've been dealt with in a comprehensive manner. The Turnbull's government, if a Royal Commission or a commission of inquiry goes ahead, all of these important initiatives will be delayed indefinitely. When we were plagued by inertia, waiting for yet another inquiry, an incredibly expensive inquiry, a totally unnecessary inquiry. A Royal Commission or a parliamentary commission of inquiry will cost the taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. It will take so many years to complete. It will undermine the confidence in our banking sector, in our banking system, and it will harm investment in the system itself, and investment in the economy, and most importantly, it will risk our AAA credit rating. It is a witch hunt. You are after a witch hunt. It is totally unproductive. It will do nothing. It will do nothing to assist consumers in any practical way. You are right, Senator Whish-Wilson. You are absolutely right when you say that this Prime Minister has no intention of holding a Royal Commission into the banking sector, the banking and financial industry. You're absolutely right when you say that this Prime Minister has no intention of holding a parliamentary inquiry into the banking sector, into the banking and financial services sector. You have said, however, that the executive won't act. Well, on the contrary, Senator Whish-Wilson, this government is acting right now. It is acting right now to respond to those 17 inquiries that you referred to. It is acting right now to strengthen our financial system. It is acting right now with funding to ASIC. It is acting right now with critical reviews into small business sectors. It is acting right now in critical reviews into white-collar crime, critical reviews into the ERD framework. This government is focused on implementing the reforms that are needed to strengthen the financial system, not risking delay to those reforms by holding unnecessary, expensive, time-consuming, waste of taxpayer-funded resources, populist politics inquiries. How many of these discussions do we need to have? How many of these discussions do we need to go through just in the Economics References Committee? We have so many of these discussions, and you're involved with them, Senator Whish-Wilson, through the chair. And Senator Whish-Wilson is involved with many of these inquiries, and yet they want more. They want more. Well, there's an opportunity to contribute to those inquiries, and Senator Whish-Wilson, through the chair, Senator Whish-Wilson has the opportunity to commit to those inquiries, to attend those inquiries, to hear from the witnesses that are in front of those inquiries, and to contribute to the reports. And yet he wants more. I think this is yet another populist stunt. Now, it's been the Labor Party that has put put the kibosh on the Murray inquiry in the past. It is yet now they disingenuously call for a Banking Royal Commission. Now it's the Greens calling for a parliamentary inquiry. When does this end? When does this end? Let this government focus on implementing the reforms that it needs to strengthen the financial system, rather than risking further delay to those reforms by holding unnecessary, expensive, time-consuming, populist, politics-driven inquiries.
Thank you, Senator Hume.